So, hello everyone. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Banu Saatçi. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Milan, and I'm representing here the Italian team. But we were responsible for 5 Italian craft companies. But at the same time, we were leading Work Package 4. And we were especially responsible for the last deliverable of the Work Package 4, which is focusing on future skills training content. So rather than focusing on future skills mapping, we try to really think about what ethnographic research shows us about skills and what we can really say about this, skills forecasting. So the first thing I want to point is the two paradoxes we see on Industry 5.0. On the one hand, we are asked to prepare workers for technologies that are not yet present in the workplace. And at the same time, we assume that managers have responsibility, they should have this ethical value when they are managing their companies, but we really don't know that much how it is enacted in the workplace. And we try to think about, as a central question, what if skills and responsibility both emerge through practice? And I will try to, put you into a journey from examples from different companies, how this really happens. And actually, when we focused on that, of course, we didn't think about it at the beginning, but we really think that responsible management as practice, which is a concept by Gherardi and Lash, and at the same time, responsibility by De Souza Bispo is really particularly relevant and can be really important to address those challenges. So we see that there are many future skills debates, there are many predictive lists by different institutions, OECD, WEF, EU, 2030, 2050, what will happen in the future, and especially with the AI, it becomes even more important. And these forecasts, actually, there are very different types of them. There are many different definitions of them. But these all assume that skills can be identified and codified in advance. But actually, we see that in critical skills research, skills are very much context-dependent, socially constructed, and visible only through practice. And one trend, actually, especially after AI, we see is that there are so many quantitative research going on, especially in the US, trying to understand which jobs will be replaced, which skills will be diminishing. But actually, we think that it's the context which really shows if it happens or not. And another point is about, again, responsibility. We always think about, okay, there are good managers, bad managers, and that very much depends on their personal character. But at the same time, it's not only about ethical attributes, because managers are also facing challenges. Many things are happening on one day of a manager. So in the end, they're also choices, even though they have also their own values, they're also subject to change. And they very much also are done every day through actions and choices, which are also very much context dependent. So we actually want to a bit talk about what is responsibility in our context, which is the situated capacity to respond to technological contingencies as they unfold. So actually, this is the overview of the 10 companies. Of course, these are the pseudonymized names in our case, and I will try to talk to you about how this responsibility is enacted through 4 different vignettes. And actually, I will also try to focus on the 4 dynamics of skills emergence we have seen, which can be defined as experimentation and bricolage, technological breakdowns, infrastructures of visibility, and hybrid role formation. So the first case I will talk about is CraftKey, and it's a small light engineering and repair firm. And like many different companies, I also maybe need to mention, we always, as the Italian team, are called artisanal company responsible, but at the same time, we have seen that also in manufacturing, there are many craft practices. So actually, this company is also facing skilled labor shortage, and that is why when there is a skilled labor shortage, you really need workers that are really eager to learn, they are really curious to learn, and motivated to play out with some technologies. So when they decided to adopt CNC machines, instead of having a formal training, bringing it to the shop floor, they decided to bring it to the employees and also some local vocational school students. And when the workers and those students started to experiment with this technology, there was also one student who was really like very interested and really accomplishing stuff, and in the end they decided to hire him also. And this open-ended bricolage and engaging with technology, it allowed also workers also to be curious and experimenting with what can they really achieve beyond the already described capabilities with those technologies. And the company, because like every also, I think in the craft companies we have seen, as these companies really try to preserve the artisanal knowledge and skills, mixed reality could be also another possible option where without a supervisor, a worker can learn from retiring operators how to use the machines. In the end, due to also resources, I mean, adoption failed technically, but also it showed how skill formation and the codifying tested knowledge is not only an individual and isolated practice, but also a community of practice among the workers. So in the end, it was a bundle, but it also showed that some skills can only emerge through hands-on practice. And we see that the experimentation and bricolage and technological breakdowns are really like dynamics where you see what you can get from hands-on practice on skills. Secondly, when we move to Golden Briar, which is a luxury briar pipe manufacturing in Italy, artisans are working with highly variable natural material, which is the briar, and the density of it, the humidity of it is very important for the workers. And actually, when we were collecting data, we noticed that even though they are required to wear gloves, they were refusing it because they want to sense the material, and they were even like to save themselves, like using plasters on their fingers rather than wearing gloves. So they really that much want to sense the material. And company decided to introduce MES and tablets with the help of a technology consultancy company. But actually workers were refusing in the sense that, for instance, what is called in Italian ripasso is about when a briar is not in the perfect phase in one part of the production process. They want to go back to other artisanal workers and try to fix it. This process of ripasso was so difficult to be codified in the digital, MES systems. And also like scanning through tablets, going back, coming forward, it was really making the workflow very difficult for the workers. So workers insisted that this wasn't working for them, and at the beginning management considered this as a reaction and refusal to technology. But then with the help of the consultancy company, the managers understood that digitalization instead became diagnostic. It wasn't their refusal, the issue. It was that system, which is very much strict, was not really compatible with artisanal way of production. So in the end, they really tried to understand through the also like technology consultancy company with the workers, how they can adapt that system to their own production process. And actually this worked in a way like an infrastructure of visibility. The skills or like the production processes which weren't visible to the management has become more visible more than ever. I remember even like head of production once said, we really didn't think that it was that much complex. Well, we see them producing on the shop floor, but really the production process is much more complex than we have thought. So it became also like awareness for shifting from control to learning. When we move to the company, which is a medium food and oil processing equipment company, here again we have seen like Craftkey, motivation and reliability was more important than formal qualifications, since skilled workers are also lacking. And there was, for instance, an interesting case of a cleaner who was really very interested in dealing with the machines, playing, and in the end hired as an operator. And there, an interesting case happened. So the company wanted to produce more units, and they wanted to understand the bottlenecks in the production process. So they decided to implement MES system and actually put also some display screens in front of the operators. But actually, it was the managers whom this system was intended, because they had to observe what was going on in the plant. But actually, workers refused that and were complaining about it because they really didn't like that they had to adjust their production based on what needed to be seen by the managers. And another thing is they really wanted to see the broader picture, like what was going on the plant. Like you are seeing just one unit as a worker, like what you are doing, maybe through the displays, but they also wanted to see what their task is really serving in the big picture. So in the end, they decided to display to broaden the display data and show plant-wide information also to these operators. And they really were more, also taking initiatives when they think they can fit better for the bigger picture and how their task can complement the whole workflow and production process. So this also required them to be more having more digital literacy in terms of reading the data. And also it led the management hand in hand with the workers to have more participative development. Lastly, in the case of Lloyd, which is a small capital equipment components engineering, I find this case, I think, really very interesting because it shifts also how we see where the technology really upskills or reskills the workers. So, in this company, mainly the welding is done manually, and the company decided to buy laser spot welder to do better welding in very small, tiny spots. And actually, welding is also very much an artisanal case because you really need to feel the heat. You work under microscope, and you really need to understand how the metal responds also. And actually, LSW augmented skills at micro scales, but at the same time, it required workers to have more visual literacy and fine motor control because they are used to deal with the welding and the metal based on how they see, how they sense the material. But this required them to do this through the screens. So this required different way of calibration and different motor control, which in the end also allowed them to complement the welding when the technology wasn't enough. So we always think the technology is doing it better, but at the same time, it can also, the workers can also complement when the technology is failing. This also happened in the case of water jet cutter. They wanted a better technology, but of course, many technology adoption decisions are also based on the financial resources. So in the end, they went with a smaller and less quality one. And again, it is the workers who had to develop new skills and new ways of dealing with the machine to complement its needs. So in a way, even the technology we choose or we decide to invest is a political choice, and it affects how the workers are adopting these technologies and what kind of skills they are developing. So here again, we have seen the hybrid role formation and digital tools augmenting manual skills. So one part of our deliverable also, apart from talking about skills emergence and how skills emerge on the shop floor, was also thinking about, okay, but then how can we really help the companies to better spot the skills that are missing or coming to the shop floor as a new capability. And one also thing we are always assuming is that we need to train the workers. But actually, our fieldwork shows that it is also the managers who enable the conditions, the best conditions for the emergence of skills. So we come up with the SPOT framework, which can help managers, rather than focusing on the data, on the dashboards and what they see in their room, to move to the shop floor and really try to understand and interact with the workers and understand where the technology really upskills them and where it deskills them. So we suggest them to see the invisible, observing where workers improvise, adapt, and compensate, partner with the workers, talking to them what they are learning on the shop floor and what they are learning with the new technology. And they need to orchestrate this process. It's not only about orchestrating the workers, but also orchestrating both the technology workers and their together, working. And this needs to also integrate this constantly emergent learning into daily operations and workflows. And lastly, transform. We think that the managers can transform really their workplaces by turning emergent skills into institutional knowledge and practice. So that's why what we are trying to say is that the managers can really benefit from moving from control and compliance to facilitation and participative learning, not only for having a human-centered Industry 5.0, it is actually, our examples show that it is beneficial for the production process also, and workers improving their skills. So what are the implications overall for managers, organizations, and EU policy? For managers, we say that use the SPOT framework, try to recognize and support emerging skills daily. Having responsible technologies does not mean that they are responsibly, adopted on the shop floor. Like, for instance, in the case of AI, everybody talks about responsible AI, but it really doesn't reassure that workers are using these technologies or like they are forced to adopt these technologies responsibly. So it's very important that managers take a proactive role there. For organizations, we think that adopting co-creative processes where managers, workers, unions, and web providers jointly come together and develop emerging skills. And the parity of voice is very important for that, and shop floor grounded dialogue. And for EU policy, we suggest moving from forecasting to facilitating. And we know that EU invests a lot in workers, developing new skills, and where really the Industry 5.0, framework, and also the other institutions of EU is supporting the workers. But it's also very important to invest in managers as enablers and allowing this response-able workplaces from our perspective. So as a conclusion, skills are emergent, not necessarily predictable. They surface through experimentation, breakdown, and use in practice. And responsibility is enacted, not possessed. And responsibility is accomplished through situated organizational arrangements, where that's why ethnographic research is very useful to observe these processes. And Industry 5.0 needs managers who see, partner, orchestrate, and transform, stewarding the conditions where people can, people and technologies together can work and maintain the skill stewardship in Industry 5.0. Thank you very much for your attention.
That's great, very timely presentation and perfectly on time. So we have got plenty of time for questions. Alison, you're straight up again, and then Chris. Great. I need to pass that back.
Thank you, Banu. Great work. I've been around in this sector for quite a long time, as you can probably see. And what you're saying in the SPOT framework about experiential learning and embedding that at an organisational level and creating new systems about it, it really reminds me of work about experiential learning, double loop learning, Gairis and Sean, and the learning organisation that was done a while ago. It just feels like another iteration. And I just wondered whether you'd engaged with that body of work, whether it's gone out of fashion, whether it's been dismissed. Just how do you relate to that body of work that's gone before?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Alison. This was actually part of the deliverable 4.4. As I said, we developed a co-creative workflow on part of it. We were thinking about what to do, like as a practical tool to give to the managers. So I am not that much familiar with that work, and I will definitely check. But we are also a bit thinking about how we can really use this framework and maybe improve it. It's also very nice if you can give any feedback about it. That would be very useful. But thanks a lot for the suggestion.
Yeah, thanks. Great presentation. From forecasting to facilitating as advice to policymakers, could you say a little bit more about how you think that might work in practice and what that might look like? So from forecasting to facilitating. Mm-hmm.
So you mean from the manager's perspective or also policymakers' perspective?
Policymakers.
So great question, and I don't think I have like a fully established answer, but what I'm thinking is that because I very much think about what's going on in AI world also, and I see that also like regional policymakers are very much rushing about how can we adopt it, what do we need, and how we can do it in a fast way, but at the same time, especially in the EU, European context, in the best way we can, support the companies, workers. I still think that for me, it's important that we really need more ethnographic research in a context where every day the technology is changing. So we very much focus on observing these companies, but we are moving more to a place like every week a new technology is introduced, and some companies are fast-forwardly adopting this without really thinking that much. I think bringing this consciousness and awareness to especially management of the companies, where in Europe most of the companies are SMEs and most of them can be also lost about what to do, can be very useful from my perspective. It's in the end, it's not about the technology that is not introduced on the shop floor. There are also many technologies that are coming in a couple of weeks that don't exist before. So it's so hard really to forecast and act accordingly and invest accordingly. So I think it's very, very important for the role of managers more than ever, and training those managers more than ever to be more responsible and responsible in responding to those new technologies and new challenges that it brings. I think a new hybrid role could be all managers should be very tech savvy, following maybe all the AI also developments, but at the same time thinking about how it can support the shop floor, which requires again knowing the shop floor very well.
That's great, thank you. Do you mind writing a short policy brief on that for us?
Yeah, sure.
You walked into that trap, thank you.
Okay, we have got time for some other questions, but I'll just jump in with one. I'd like to echo the question of our colleague from IF Metal earlier. You talked about employee voice in this, Banu, and a lot of this is about the dialogue between management and workers. But we know that there is a kind of a fundamental power inequality in that context, which unions traditionally stand in for. They step up and represent collectively. So what's the role for unions in mediating this kind of relationship and this sort of dialogue to foreground really what are the core skills that our employees have?
Yeah, I think great question. I think it's very important, maybe like the union's also role could be making the workers understand the importance of like raising their voice more than ever when they also, want to. Because in the end, these all cases actually show in a way when the workers raise their voice, there are also, of course, more negative examples everywhere, but this can change a bit the mindset of the managers once they really decide to listen to them. So I think that's why for organizations overall, like having a parity of voice, getting like all these people together, also maybe EU kind of institutions can play a big role, I think, based on different sectors, bringing those people together, and how these new technologies are changing the workers and changing the managers' needs, and making this dialogue could be very useful from my perspective. I don't know how much it is feasible. I don't know how much different parts would be willing and to also spend time, but I think the dialogue is the most important thing in that process.
Yeah, that's great. And I think one of the interesting things that's come out, the range of different projects that we've had, is also that different industrial relations context that we have. You know, it's very different in Italy compared to the Germany context. It's different between the UK and Sweden. And it's different if you're in a large, highly unionized multinational organization with a national level agreement and an SME that perhaps doesn't have that kind of capacity. So I think it's really interesting, but we should consider that role. Any final questions? Yes.
Yeah, hi, really interesting, thank you. I was wondering, you distinguish between several stakeholders and some have come up. The one that I'm missing is, where is HR in all of this?
Where is HR, yeah.
So, and I can imagine that its role has been diluted because everything is happening in the workplace and things are going on there, but also in terms of what you said, forecasting on an organizational level, capability building, those kind of things. I was wondering, is over and done with HR, or where is it, or may it be?
Yeah, very interesting question. Of course, I couldn't represent all the companies and all the things. Yeah, but what you are saying is very interesting. One maybe like difference in most of our cases, let's say, because most of them are small and medium-sized. At least I can talk more about artisanal companies. Their also decisions about whom to hire is very much depending on what the owner says, what the manager says. So they don't have really strict hiring, procedures. But at the same time, we conducted interviews with some of the HR, like managers, and we also have seen that they were very much, at least in the cases I have observed, I can say that they were very much unaware sometimes the shop floor needs and what kind of skills they want. And actually one research we really think, doing also with like Warwick Institute of Employment Research, is how much we can compare the skills that are articulated in the job listings, and at the same time what kind of skills are needed on the shop floor that are emerging, especially in manufacturing and craft context. And I think there's really a lack of I don't know, they don't really match each other from what we are seeing so far. The managers and the companies maybe think about the high school diploma or like other types of courses that are more important, they think. But at the same time, on the shop floor, we see that there are much more important skills that they need when they deal with the technology. So I think it's a very important also research idea that we need to think about, more like mixed method approach. Thank you.
Got time for one last question if anybody had one they wanted to ask. Otherwise, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We get an early lunch. Okay, I would like to thank Banu and
Thank you
both
all.
of our early speakers as well. Yeah,